Hello everybody, good morning and welcome to the United Stands. I'm Mark Goldbridge and this is your latest Manchester United news and transfer news this Tuesday morning as Manchester United prepare for their biggest final week in a transfer window in years. Not my words, the words of The Athletic. We've also got big updates coming in on Onana transfer request. He wants out. Let's talk about that. Let's get him a taxi. We've also got a big David Ornstein update on Mainoo. More links to Saudi in relation to Bruno Fernandes. A few other bits on exits going out of Man United as well. And also, the week is moving quick, especially if you're in the UK, because we had a bank holiday yesterday. So it's Tuesday already. There's actually a game going on tomorrow for Manchester United against Grimsby, where we expect Mainoo to start and extinguish all this nonsense about him wanting out of Manchester United. But we will start off with the story around Andre Onana. Now, this is actually from The Athletic around Onana before I start talking about him wanting out. So this is what Laurie Whitwell has had to say. And now remember what we said. I'm going to say this before I read this. Remember what we were told in the March international break. We said in the March international break from very good source at the club that Ruben Amorim and Jason Wilcox had decided they wanted to move Onana on. Nice guy, well liked in the squad, but not Amorim's guy, not confidence in him from the squad. And Amorim wanted his own keeper. That was in the March international break. Now, we've stuck by that story all summer, despite the fact that as much as 3 weeks ago, there were some people pushing that, you know, I'd have never wanted a goalkeeper, despite offering Onana up to Monaco, despite asking for a loan with Emi Martinez, and despite being in advanced talks with Lemens, and despite starting Binder in the opening 2 games. So that was the backstory from March. This is what Laurie Whitwell has said. This goalkeeping move for Lemens represents a change, a development for United, as they were saying they wouldn't spend significant money on a goalkeeper unless Onana was sold. That has not happened, and I don't think he will be sold. I think he's going to stay at United beyond this transfer window. More of that in a moment. United have still decided to go for a goalkeeper because Amorim, this is the important point, Manchester United have decided to go for a goalkeeper because Amorim and all the hierarchy, all the way up to Sir Jim Ratcliffe, have decided they need to address this situation. They decided to go for a goalkeeper that they've been tracking for a while to see if adding him into the mix can raise the level of Onana or if Lemens will be the number one. So we had it in March that it was Amorim and Wilcox that wanted Onana out. This adds more substance to that and says it actually goes higher. It goes right the way through. It's a universal decision that it goes all the way up to Sir Jim Ratcliffe. So, look, I mean, I don't know many people that didn't believe that that was the case, that Amorim wanted to change the goalkeeper. And for me, I see this as a positive. I also think that with regards to what Laurie Whitwell's saying about Onana not leaving this summer transfer window, what we can tell you is that there's a couple of people, I think that Indicator News was talking about Betis. There's some rumours around Inter. What we're getting out of United this morning is that Onana has, you know, woken up and smelt the coffee, basically. He thought he could hold his place and United wouldn't get a goalkeeper in. He thought even if they brought Lemens in, he would still be number one with an understudy. What's actually happened is he's lost his place to Binder, and now another goalkeeper's coming in. So he could technically be classed as third choice keeper. Now, he might play in the game tomorrow because it's a Coca-Cola Carabao Cup game, not Coca-Cola Cup, and he would be classed as the backup keeper, but he might stick with Binder again. So Onana is effectively in the same position as an Anthony, a Sancho, a Garnacho, a Rashford. He has been Erasmus. He has been frozen out, and effectively he is now talking about, well, what are his options, which I think is a little bit too late. And I think, to be fair, Laurie Whitwell might end up being quite right. There might not be an option for Onana to get out of Manchester United in 7 days. I don't know whether a loan might be possible, but he's certainly now, it's amazing, isn't it? You know, you don't pick a goalkeeper, you buy a goalkeeper, and suddenly the goalkeeper that doesn't want to go anywhere is now going, actually, you know, I actually might want to go somewhere. Can you get in contact with Saudi? And I mean, it's difficult because really, you know, could United have communicated it better? Did Onana call the club's bluff? Was the conversation put to Onana that you're going to get dropped for the start of the season? I don't know. I don't have that detail. All I know is that Onana is now looking for a move that United might not actually give him. They might actually say, well, look, we've got Bienda, we've got Lemens, and, we would like to keep 3 goalkeepers. So I don't know how that's going to play out, but Onana certainly has got the message, probably a little bit too late. And if he'd left in June, we probably would have got a better goalkeeper. But, I think it's good from the club. I think it's good from Amorim. I really do. I think yet again, it's an example of using our power when we have it to be a football club and go, look, you know what? You're not just sitting in goal because you think you're in the powerful position. I'm going to pick somebody else. I'm going to buy somebody else. So for me, that is a big positive. Let us know your thoughts on that. But Onana now starting to look for a move. I don't know what can get done in the final week of the window. In fact, talking about The Athletic and Laurie Whitwell, this is what he also said. United are bracing for one of the busiest final weeks of a summer window in recent years. However, it will be mostly focused on outgoings. Rasmus is expected to be left out of the squad again tomorrow. His preference is to stay and fight for his place, but Napoli, among other clubs, are interested in a loan for the striker. It's an interesting thing on that. I mean, I've not been paying a lot of attention to it over the weekend. My feeling is that Napoli move is a very good move for him. But the indication has always been that he wants to stay. I don't think Amorim's going to use him pre-international break if he does stay. But I mean, I don't know. I've got to say, I watched the Newcastle-Liverpool game last night and I saw Tonali go off injured, Joel Linton go off injured, Shaw got injured. They haven't got a striker. Anthony Gordon gets a 3-match ban. And you suddenly think in one game, Newcastle had been decimated and lost 3 or 4 players. It's not beyond the realms of possibility. Xerxes not played a minute yet. If anything happens to Šeško, what we're going to do up front? So I'd rather have more options than not. But I also agree that Manchester United have had an awful transfer window and in relation to sales, and they need to get money in. In fact, I will just read you this because I think this is very interesting in relation to a few people in the chat are going, no, how's it all outgoings? Why are we not bringing players in? I think this is an interesting thing just to read you here. Let me go to, why can't I get on my own Twitter? Get what I used to do in a minute. Mark Goldbridge, here we go. So this was from The Athletic comparing expenditure and sales. So Liverpool's expenditure at the moment is just under 300 million, but they have 190 million in sales. Arsenal's spend is about 250 million. And in fairness, they've only got 7 million in sales. Chelsea's spend is 240 million and they've got 226 million in sales. And Manchester United's spend is 197 million with 0 in sales. And I think what that shows you is that the lack of success and the lack of success and the lack of sales is sort of hurting us in the last couple of weeks of the window or the last week, because we have spent 200 million. We still need a goalkeeper and we still need a midfielder, but we've made no sales and we weren't successful last year. So even Arsenal, who've spent 250 million and not really had any sales, they've still got Champions League and second in the league as success to bring money in. Liverpool have obviously sold well and successful. Chelsea have sold well and successful. Man United haven't sold well, not successful. And I think the bottleneck is starting to hurt us now, that you can't just spend without money coming in. And we weren't successful last season either to say, well, we can fall back on the Champions League money. So money's too tight to mention, as somebody once sang. And I think that's the problem that Manchester United might have in the last few days of the window, specifically around a midfielder, which brings me on to an interesting update from David Ornstein this morning. Now, some people have reacted to this in a way. I have got something else on the midfielder I want to talk about, but let me just read you this from David Ornstein. Mainoo open to leaving United as Amorim seems to prefer other midfield options. However, there don't seem to be many options for Mainoo as the transfer window closes. So some people are getting their knickers in a twist about this. For me, this is exactly the same update we had at 2 o'clock yesterday. Mainoo is not leaving Manchester United. Mainoo is Manchester United through and through and wants to stay at Manchester United. He will start tomorrow night. What you've got here is contract negotiations between two people where One might want 150 grand a week, and one might want to give him 100 grand a week. And what you've got from Mainoo is, and his people around him, is an opportunity to get into the market and say, look, we're not playing, so why would we stay? And it's all part of the negotiations on around a new contract, because you would say to Manchester United, well, look, you know, you're only offering us 100 grand a week. He's not getting any minutes. He wants to be here, but what's the incentive? And it's just part of the negotiation tactics, because there is nowhere for Mainoo to go in the next few days. And once the transfer window closes, he's a Man United player till at least January. So all this is just noise. It's not like Mainoo's putting a transfer request in. It's just noise. And this will completely and utterly subside when he starts and hopefully plays well tomorrow. The issue is that, as we've all said, why would you sign the contract when you're not being used by the manager? But I also, as I said yesterday, just don't fall into the sensationalism of another story that's got no substance to it. Like, Mainoo's not for sale. Mainoo's not going to put a transfer request in. There's just this confusion around when the contract's going to get signed and when he's actually going to get some minutes. But in 24 hours, he'll be starting a game for Manchester United and all of this will stop. So I'm just sort of like, let's just get through the next 24 hours. He'll start tomorrow. And look, worst case scenario, Chelsea step forward with 60 million quid. That's worst case scenario. Chelsea come forward with 60 million pounds. He won't start for Chelsea. So why would you go there? And why would Man United do that deal? Like, the midfield is a player short as it is. So I think sometimes you just got to look at things logically and go, yeah, look, I completely get the rumours and the noise and, you know, the unhappiness about lack of minutes. But this is a player that wants to stay at Manchester United. This is a club that wants to keep him at Manchester United. And we're going to go through a lot of transition this season. There's a lot of nurturing going on, whether you look at people like Yoro, the goalkeeper, Dorgu. Mainoo is part of that process. Šeško will be the same. There's a longer term picture here, and he's certainly part of those plans. I think what we're struggling with at the moment is this identity in the midfield of, we've got 4 players, none of which work well together, 2 of which will be gone in a year, and Amorim, let's be honest, is struggling to build a midfield, which is the most important area of the pitch. I think most of us have worked through the scenario of Bruno Fernandes needs taking out of that midfield. Now, you've then got to stick with a midfield pair. We can't keep chopping and changing. And I think that tomorrow's going to be a big opportunity for Mainoo to start and play. If he's the understudy to Bruno and Bruno's playing badly, he deserves to get minutes. And I think that's the story. I think there is a player there that wants an opportunity. And what I'd be excited by is that everybody I talk to at the moment, I'm just like, feed Cunha, feed Cunha, feed Cunha, feed Cunha. And Mainoo will feed Cunha. You know, he will. And I think that's the pathway back into the team. So I am not worried at all. I think there's a lot of scaremongering going on. And, you know, show me the transfer request from Mainoo. There won't be one. It's as simple as that. Just going back to the midfield, another little bit that I didn't bring in from The Athletic. United signing a midfielder is not guaranteed. Wharton and Yulman are admired, but no interest is advanced. Now, I've got to say this about the midfielder. Mainoo will stay. Casemiro's going to stay. Agate's going to stay. And I believe Bruno will stay, although that's a separate topic for a moment. 4 midfielders isn't enough for the problems that we've got. Not likely, not guaranteed that we'll bring a midfielder in. We've got 6 days. We've got 6 days to do a deal. And look, honestly, I'm not going to sit here and say it's impossible, but there are no names. There are no names at all for a midfielder. Now, we're all grown up and mature enough to know that in the last few days of a transfer window, even with 3 days to go, you can pull a deal off that nobody thought was possible. I would say that's where we are. You can look at it and go, you can't sign Yulman in 6 days. You can't sign Wharton in 6 days. You can't go back and get Baleba in 6 days. You can't sign Edison in 6 days. You can't do that in 6 days. But you can, because there are always exceptions to the rule when the transfer window starts to close. The Isak deal has to get done in 6 days. Guehi has to get done in 6 days. Donnarumma has to get done in 6 days. Rodrigo has to get done in 6 days if they're going to get done. So deals can be done in the next 6 days. I am still not going to jump into the drama of we're not getting a midfielder, window shut, because I think that's just this noise around Manchester United that we constantly have. You know, I just block it out. The negativity, I just block it out, because there is still time for us to do something. I completely and utterly subscribe to the view that how do Manchester United go and suddenly start negotiating with Sporting or Crystal Palace or Brighton when the day, you know, the window will be closed in a week? You know, we need 6 weeks to do a deal, not 6 days. Absolutely. But it doesn't mean we can't do one in the next 6 days. It doesn't. And it will be very difficult. And absolutely, we are not in talks with anybody at the moment. So that needs to change quickly. And I'll repeat what I said at the weekend. My fear is Lemens gets dragged out all week to cover up the fact that we're not going to get a midfielder. If United don't get Lemens done until, you know, after Burnley, then there is no deal for a midfielder. There's no, I don't have any time. So, you know, I think we need to get that Lemens deal done now so that it gives us time to do the deal for a midfielder. But where we go for a midfielder, I don't know. But is anybody seriously going to sit here and go, we don't need a midfielder? I mean, look, I had this scenario today. Mainoo comes into the team, does really well. Agate gets his confidence back. We play Mainoo and Agate, and it works. Then one of them gets injured, and then you've got to play Casemiro or Bruno again. So even if we find a midfield pair that works with what we've got, we're only one injury away from using one of the others. So we definitely need a midfielder. It's a scary proposition to go into the season as we are at the moment. But there is time. There is time to do stuff. I'm just going to catch up on some of your comments because there's still quite a lot to go through. I need to talk to you about Bruno in Saudi. Hayden says, hypothetically, what if Brighton came in with a swap deal with Mainoo and cash for Baleba? What's your thoughts? Well, I think it's an amazing chat. I'm going to put a poll for you, and you can tell me the answer, and I will come back to that one. Would you swap Mainoo for Baleba? Yes or no? Get your votes in there, and we'll come back to that one. That's the sort of content you get here. It's a good question. How can you support a guy who has 7 wins in 30 Premier League games? How far have we fallen? This is acceptable. This is acceptable. I know the rotation of coaches through the years has become bad, but the club's best interest at heart, he should be sacked. Victoria, look, I appreciate the super chats. It's great, but you're not going to dominate the show on it. And, you know, I'm sure everyone in the chat's going, wow, amazing, amazing super chat. I'm just going to say this right here, right now. You did 3 yesterday. They didn't make any sense. You've done 1 today. It's disruptive to the show. And we're not, you know, that obsessed with mega super chats. And I know that sounds odd, but we're not going to get dictated to by somebody who does £100 super chat and starts shouting Amrim out. Like, I know exactly what you're doing. That's exactly what you're trying to do. You're trying to run an Amrim out campaign by using, you know, big super chats. But look, if we were reliant on that, we may as well stop. Like, I find the Amrim out thing stupid, so I think you're stupid, and that's my comeback. And I've explained it. We're 2 games in. Eddie Howe's got 1 point from 6. Emery's got 1 point from 6. And for me, the season starts now, not last season. This is the first time Amrim's had a pre-season and a transfer window. The season starts now. He's got 1 point from 6. So's Emery, so's Eddie Howe. Way too early to be talking about Amrim out. Ridiculous, in fact. What is the constant through all the years of steady decline? Bruno, says Marlowe. It can't be ignored any longer. The captain's head is elsewhere. He looks miserable and it's affecting the whole team. Time to go, says Marlowe. Have you ever thought about Bruno Fernandes? And I'll put this in here as well, because it's all about, you know, bringing in different strands. Have you ever thought with Bruno Fernandes that he doesn't like playing in the midfield? I've not really heard. I mean, we mentioned it towards the end of last season, but it hasn't been brought back in again. I like Bruno Fernandes. I think as a number 10, he would be brilliant for Bayern Munich or Real Madrid or Barcelona. He might not start, but he's that quality of player. He's a good player as a number 10. We moan about Bruno playing in the midfield. Have you ever thought Bruno doesn't like playing in the midfield? You know, he's intelligent enough to know that Smith Rowe scored because he didn't track the runner. But does he want to be tracking runners into the 6-yard box? You know, does he want to be playing in the centre circle or does he want to be playing close to the goal? And I think you're right, Marlo. I think there is an increased level of petulance with Bruno at the moment, but it may well be justifiably because he doesn't like playing in the midfield. I don't like him playing in the midfield. You don't like him playing in the midfield. Breaking news. Maybe he doesn't like playing in the midfield. And maybe he's looking at it now going, I spent 2 weeks seriously thinking about going to Saudi and earning, you know, £1 million a week. Maybe that's still in his head. Maybe he you know, because it wasn't an instant no. It was a 2-week decision that really impacted him in the final against Chelsea. And maybe he's unsettled. You know, he's a human being at the end of the day. I think you make a good point. Hayden says, hypothetically, what if Brian came and done that one? We're going to answer that in a moment. You make a good point, but from Mainoo's side, he has been told categorically that he's competing for one position against someone that never gets dropped, says Dave the Brave. Yes. And I think it's a clever move by Mainoo to project that, you know, he's a little bit unsettled because he's not getting game time. But that will be solved in 24 hours, and then it's his opportunity. Seth says, grow up watching Rooney, Evra, Keane as captain, watching grumpy Bruno as captain is such a disappointment. He needs to leave. Feels like they just kept him to say we finished 15th, but able to keep best player. Nick, well, I'm going to talk about the Saudi links to Bruno in a minute. Nick B says, do you think Amrim has not picked him because he has not committed his future to the club and the team? Oh, thanks, Nick. I mean, actually, you've just made a bloody good point. I mean, we don't like that, do we? I mean, if this was Garnacho, people would probably say, well, we shouldn't pick him until he signs a contract. Maybe, I don't know, maybe there is something in that. I mean, I've never thought of it like that before, but has Mainoo committed his future to the team? I mean, he has got 2 years left on his contract, but yeah, I mean, I don't know whether that's it. I don't know. Maybe, but I don't know. Maybe the club are putting Amrim under pressure, saying, like, you know, you can't pick Rasmus because we want to sell him, and you don't pick Mainoo because we need him to sign a new contract. If we pick him before he signs a new contract, he could start running it down. I mean, stranger things have happened. I'd rather sell Bruno if the bid's true and use Mainoo and Agate, says Genders. Anything over 100k and Mainoo can leave for me, says Bees. Hambo says, have your sources got any news on Delap yet? Yeah, the news on Delap, mate, was from April, the same as Onana in March, and it was that Delap was Manchester United's priority, and they were very confident that they were going to sign him, and that was the update. Now, I don't negotiate the deal, and I'm not the CEO, but you know, that information was true. So, you know, grow up. I'm depressed and crying, says Ploppy. We suck. We'll win tomorrow. We did at least get sign-on payments from others, says Andres. And John United says, Mainoo versus Amrim debate needs to stop. It's a distraction from the real issue. We need a goalkeeper and a midfielder. Absolutely spot on, John. Is Mainoo the right profile for the midfield, but with the wrong partner in Bruno, or is he just the wrong profile for Amrim's midfield, says Jack? Look, I like Mainoo, so I'm always going to defend Mainoo. I do like Mainoo. And I think he's a really, really talented player, but I don't think we've seen the best of him for over a year. I think he got burnt out in year one, going to the Euros. Last season was terrible for him before Amrim came in. People forget about Mainoo. He was not very good for Ten Hag for the first 3 months of the season. He had a bad year last year. I think he's ridiculously young and he's ridiculously talented. But as I said yesterday, I think there is a bit of revisionism going on, that people are acting like he's prime Rodri or something like that. Like there's still a big question mark over him because we haven't seen him for so long. We haven't seen him play well for a year. So I just want to see him back in the team tomorrow after a pre-season that was very, very good. He had a really good pre-season. So I just want to see him back playing games. But it is only game 3. I was speaking to somebody today actually, and they were laughing that we've got Grimsby. And I went, well, this is what happens when you're shit and you finish in the bottom half of the Premier League. You have to play an extra round in the Carabao Cup. But actually, I'm really pleased. As long as Amrim doesn't do something ridiculous, like pick a load of bloody kids. If he picks like Maguire, Agate, Mainoo, Sheshko, Xerxes, Leon, people who need minutes, I think it's a great opportunity for United tomorrow, because what do we need? We need games. We need minutes. People need minutes. We need confidence. We go tomorrow and we win 4-0. It's confidence. You beat Burnley 3-0. It's confidence. And we need confidence. Like if we if we took the chances against Fulham in the first half, we'd have been at least 2-0 up at half time. Our defence doesn't blow that unless they get 2 corners, and it's a confidence thing. So I'm really happy we've got a game tomorrow, and I think it's a real opportunity for people to come in and do well. I mean, I wouldn't pick Yoro, I wouldn't pick De Ligt. They're 2 of our best players at the moment, so there's an opportunity to pick people like Kevin and Maguire. Obviously, we've mentioned Mainoo. Seshko needs minutes. Xerxes needs minutes. I'd probably start in Burmo. He needs minutes. Ahmad needs minutes. But beyond that, take Bruno out, take Cunha out, take Casemiro out, delete Yoro out, and give people a chance. What if we lose to Grimsby? Well, never say never. This is a really interesting poll. We had a super chat about this. Would you swap Mainoo for Baleba? It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And I will talk about the Bruno Saudi thing. It's not going to happen. But if Brighton rang up Man United and said, look, Baleba's unsettled, we're ready to cash in, but we'll only do it in a straight swap for Mainoo, would you do it? I think Amrin would do it, is my honest answer. And I think that's my honest answer. I would be more happy with, we'll take Baleba for 80 and you can have Mainoo on a loan for a year. I would be happy with that. But Mainoo would have to sign a fucking contract before he went, because he's not running a contract down. That's not going to happen. So I think it's important. It was a very good point by Nick B. We need to get that contract signed by Mainoo, because players do run contracts down these days. But would I do a straight swap, Mainoo for Baleba? I don't know. I agree. Like 53% of you are saying yes, 47% of you are saying no. You know me, I'm always very loyal to the younger players. Like people have said in the past, would you swap Garnacho for this or Bruno for that? And I always say no. It's got to be a no. It's got to be a no. If I'm being consistent, it's got to be a no. But I understand the yes. I mean, and the reason Amrin would say yes is because Baleba is the player that he wants. It's the plan A. So, I mean, I think, would Amrin swap Baleba for Bruno? I bloody would. That would be a piece of piss. I'd swap Baleba for I'd swap Baleba for Bruno and Casemiro, to be honest with you. Get Casemiro's wages off 2 for 1. Mainoo, I don't think I would. I really don't think I would on that one, to be honest with you. Mainoo doesn't deserve 180k a week. Well, we don't know the wages. We don't know the wages. Jack Brooks says SNS says these stupid fans are the reason the owners get away with it. All they want are shiny new signings and sacking managers every year. Yeah. Would you pick Tom Heaton tomorrow or stick with Binder? If we're rotating goalkeepers, because it's the Carabao Cup, I'd go with Tom Heaton over Onana. Yeah, I don't want to see Onana anywhere near a Man United shirt. Kick him out in the nicest possible sense. If he's looking to move, don't give an avenue back. And I don't see how Binder gets dropped for Burnley anyway. His mistake was the Arsenal game. Didn't actually cost us a goal at the weekend. Yeah, very shaky on corners, but I can see Binder holding his place until Lamens comes in after the international break. So I don't want to see Onana back in the team. Just on Bruno, there are some murmurings around this morning about Al Ittihad again, and a bid coming in this week. The Saudis will do it. Absolutely 100%. The Saudis will bid for Bruno if there's a sniff of a chance. Like, unashamedly, they want Bruno, and they've wanted Bruno for 2 summers, maybe even 3. I forget what Fabrizio said, or when he first started it. So they will bid. But Manchester United would be fools to do this deal now when they could have done it 2 months ago and had a whole summer with £100 million in their pocket. I also listened to what Ben Jacobs said, and apparently Al Ittihad need to sell to bring a player in. And further to that, this morning, Fabrizio Romano has also said that Al Ittihad are still trying to find a solution for Rodrigo Moura of Porto, having had a €63 million bid rejected. So I'm sort of looking at this Bruno Saudi thing and going, it doesn't actually add up, really, does it? Like the route for it to happen doesn't actually seem to be there at the moment. So look, yeah, I mean, look, we are definitely facing a huge final week in the transfer window for Manchester United and the general Premier League. We still are, interestingly, looking at what's going to happen with Isak and other. I mean, Arsenal have just bought another player that Spurs were looking at. I mean, I don't know why Arsenal need to bring in a fullback, but they've just brought one in from Leverkusen. So there are people doing that. There are people doing like business all the time, and obviously anything can happen because of that. But I don't subscribe again. I'm subscribing to a lot this morning. Please do subscribe to the United Stand, because I'm subscribing to everything. But I don't subscribe to the view that Man United are going to cash in on Bruno. And also, I don't think Bruno could make that decision that quick. I really do think it would be another bit of thinking time. And I just don't think he wants to go this year. I'm sort of the opinion that he'll go next year now. So I don't think Bruno goes. I know that creates a problem. There's no two ways about it. That definitely creates a problem for us. I think it's a huge problem. I hate being right on this, and I'm sure, well, actually, I'm not sure. I think some people like to get proved right at the detriment of Manchester United, but I don't. I don't at all, and I think that it presents a huge problem for us, because I can only go back and talk about what we were talking about back in June, and my stance in June was that we take the money and we rebuild, and that was the time to do it, and we chose not to do that. The flip side to that now is that we're going to be in a position where we've got a whole season of Bruno Fernandes with a manager that doesn't want to play him as a number 10, and therefore he's going to end up playing as a midfielder. And a whole season of Bruno in the midfield is worrying, because he can't do it. And if he can't do something, that weakens us. And if it weakens us, we're going to have what we had on Sunday night, where it's just constant roller coaster up and down. And that's a very depressing, thought. But I don't see it being possible for Manchester United to be able to do that deal in the time that's left. And I don't think they want to do it as well. Rightly or wrongly, they made their choice, and I think they'll lie in the bed of that. How do you get Bruno to work in the midfield? If we're stuck with Bruno in the midfield for the next year at least, how do you get it to work? You need a midfielder next to him with the engine of a bloody Land Rover, and you need one of your centre-backs to step into the midfield. And we don't see that. We don't see one of the centre-backs stepping into the midfield. It doesn't happen. So Luke Shaw is never going to step into the midfield. Yoro, I think, is almost the centre-back with the lit. I mean, I feel like Luke Shaw's the spare part, really. He should be stepping into the midfield, but there's no way he's got the legs for it. So we're playing with 3 centre-backs and sometimes 2 full-backs. Marco Silva was absolutely correct at the weekend, but I'm not going to give him a glow-up, because we all know it. Like, we've got 5 defenders and 2 midfielders. Swamp the midfield. Swamp the midfield. The system needs to allow for support in the midfield, and I just don't think we've got the players with the IQ to do it. I really don't. I think it comes down to players, not system. I've said that time and time again. With regards to the goalkeeper, just to close this door, I think it's important to do it. Update around Donnarumma. Fabrizio Romano, Man City are progressing in talks with Donnarumma. Fee would be 30 to 35 million euros, as PSG have reduced the price from 50. Donnarumma is ready to join the Man City project when Edison exits for Galatasaray. So, what could have been? I mean, remember, people wanted to cancel the protests because they thought they were getting Baleba and Donnarumma. 2 weeks later, you haven't got anyone. And I think sometimes United fans just need to think, because it ain't real till they're holding up the shirt. And it's just another stain on this fan base, isn't it? Collectively, as I said yesterday, we all have to take responsibility. We cancelled protests against the Glazers because we thought we were getting Baleba and Donnarumma. We can't lie. That's what happened. There was a protest planned ahead of the Arsenal game against the ownership, and people abused and hounded the 58 for doing it because we're getting Baleba and Donnarumma. And here we are 2 weeks later, no protest planned, and we haven't got a midfielder. And we actually haven't got a goalkeeper. So, yeah, that did happen. Somebody said, did that happen? Yeah, the 58 put out a release saying they were going to do a protest ahead of the Arsenal game. And social media and certain YouTube United channels did videos castigating them, slating them, tweeting about them, saying, read the room, and basically forced it into a negative thing. What did I say at the time? I said the problem with doing a protest when there's a transfer window going on is that certain United fans get blinded by shiny new toys. The funny thing is, we haven't even got the shiny new toys. We didn't even get them. So, yeah, we've got to get a midfielder. We have to get a midfielder, don't we? If we don't get a midfielder, it's you know what? I'm always talking like it's an 8 o'clock show because the 8 o'clock shows are great, and they're a little bit more. We don't have to focus on news as much. We can be a bit more opinionated. But I'll open up to you this morning and I'll say this. I'm absolutely missing June and July with no football. Never, ever thought I'd say this, but in June and July, news, opinion, it was a better space. As soon as the games are back, the Amrim outers who've been hiding all summer are back, creating their agendas, pitting Amrim against Mainoo and all this stuff. The media needs someone to write about, so it will always be us. And it splits the fan base, and then it gets toxic. And I absolutely hate it. I dread it when we don't win, because it's like, it's just a pile on of, in fairness to the Amrim outers, they're already Amrim out. It's not because we've drawn a game against Fulham. They were Amrim out from last season. They've just been hiding. But it's just it's so difficult when you might be a fan like myself who is actually saying, I think we'll have a bumpy ride until game 10. And game 10 to 30 is where I think it will get better. But fasten your seatbelts. I really do think in the first 10 games it's going to be tough. We haven't got the goalkeeper. We haven't got the midfielder. And Burmo isn't fit. Szczesko's not only just come in. And we need to get used to everybody. And I think it will be a bumpy ride. I actually do think if we just started playing like Wolves and every chance we got the ball into Cunha, would be a better team. But we've got too many other players that don't want to do that. We've got too many other superstars in the team that don't want to just give the ball to Cunha. So there's a lot of adjustment to come in. Apparently Fiorentina are in talks with Lindelof. I mean, that's amazing that Eriksen and Lindelof haven't found a club either. Let's have a quick look. It's nothing to do with us. Betis want a loan deal for Anthony with an option to reassess in the summer, but the deal is requiring concessions from all parties involved. Anthony must significantly reduce his salary to align with Betis' situation. Man United have yet to agree to lower their demands, while Betis remained firm on not exceeding its budget, prioritising a temporary loan over permanent transfer to safeguard future stability. A decision is expected by Tuesday. I mean, I would imagine Anthony, as we spoke about last night, wants his cake and eat it. Here we go, but Ben Jacobs just putting a post out about Fabinho leaving Al Ittihad so that Al Ittihad can get the lad from Porto. So no mention of Bruno at all there. Fiorentina are in talks with... okay, that's with that. Just going back to that. Just going back to what said about Anthony there. I mean, I don't know. I don't intend to ruin another day thinking about Garnacho, Sancho and Anthony and their piss poor attitude. Paul Cassidy says, similar to my thoughts on Van Gaal, I didn't want Amrim at the club, both tactically rigid, but I'm going to be an Amrim out subscriber. Paul, if you want to be Amrim out, that's absolutely fine. I'm not, you're entitled to make your opinion. I just think it's stupid. And I'm allowed to say that. And you're allowed to say, well, I think you're stupid for backing him. But the reason I think you're stupid is we're 2 games in, got 1 point from 6. We shouldn't have lost to Arsenal. And we drew at Fulham, which actually, in the context of the Premier League, Fulham aren't a bad side. So I think it's way too early. And I also think that, yet again, the manager is hindered by the inactivity from the board. And in fairness to the board, I think they're hindered by having 3 complete and utter twats sitting on their arse and running the window down, preventing us from doing anything. If Garnacho had gone in July, I think we'd have a midfielder. I actually do want to pin it on Garnacho. If Garnacho had gone in July, we'd have £40 million in our pocket to go and buy a midfielder. So, I think there are factors out there. Do you think the current Saudi bid messed with Bruno's head and he dropped a stinker like he did in the last few games at the end of last year? Says Omka. I don't think Bruno's going to Saudi, so I think he dropped a stinker, but I don't think that's to do with it. Blue Phoenix says, I feel like Amrim's sacking himself with the decisions he's making with Bruno and not starting Šeško. But I think all these things can change. Like, it's still very early in the season. We need to build a squad instead of building around one, says John. Scared to drop Bruno as Maguire was vilified, says Simon Moss. I don't get the context of that. Grimsby lineup: Binder, Heaven, Maguire, Shaw, Dalot, Leon, Mainoo, Bruno, Ahmad, and Mbeumo and Šeško. Well, I don't think Luke Shaw will be starting 3 games in a week for us. But apart from that, I quite like the fact that Heaven and Maguire come in, Leon, Mainoo, and I wouldn't start Bruno. Why does Bruno have to start every fucking game? I mean, I expect Bruno will start, but I wouldn't start Bruno. At some point, you've got to go, you were shit at the weekend, you dropped. I mean, I can't repeat it. Salah got dropped and subbed. Maybe not dropped, but he definitely got subbed a lot by Klopp. I don't think the managers have ignored it. They didn't get who they wanted. No De Jong or João Neves, Casemiro and Agate in, and Scott sold, says Paul. Sean Turner says, I'm guessing most fans haven't watched Baleba first 2 games. He's been awful. I don't want to hear his head's turned. He looks happy in training, says Sean Turner. Would you pick Tom Heaton tomorrow or stick with Binder? I've done that one. Don Rick says, hi, Goat. Thank you for the show. Fergie took 3 to 4 years to win. Please give Ruben a chance. I would prefer Mainoo over Bruno in an 8 role and Bruno in a 10. Be patient and support the club at all times. I agree with everything you've said. Been watching since COVID. You've done well. I want to ask, what's your dream last 6 days of the window, including who? Says Ricky. Great question. I mean, obviously Lamens is going to be the goalkeeper, so I'm not going to change that. And I would still love to bring Baleba in, or a Wharton, or a Youngland. I think that is the sort of significant signing you need to make. People are making significant signings, whether it's Chelsea, Man City, even Spurs. So we need to make a significant... If we want to be in the top 5, you need to make a significant signing. It's as simple as that. Pete Phillips says, can we as a community turn on the ownership rather than the manager? Even if you believe the manager is shit, the ownership picked him, it's their fault. Well, very logical. Pete, thank you very much. Odd question, why have 2 managers ignored the centre midfield position, says Keel. Jack Brooks says, everyone saying Amrim out are all part of the problem with this football club. It needs 1 or 2 more seasons at least. Well, I genuinely think Sir Jim will give him that as well. WGFVH says, I wonder if Amrim did similar at Sporting, re-sticking to his favourite captain. Sadly, I'm looking forward to next season more with Bruno gone, but fear the state we and Amrim will be in by then. Sanska says, why have you stopped saying swivel on it? You were using it a lot during lockdown. Is it because how poor we've been recently? Yeah, probably not many opportunities. Muyad says, I think Amrim will do to Bruno what Jose did to Rooney, and Bruno will be eventually phased out. Makes no sense for United to sell their captain, says Muyad. And George Mitchell says, unfortunately, Bruno was bought in for a different system and our style doesn't suit him anymore. Sadly, one way forward is buy for the system, says George Mitchell. Hader says, if the midfield was Roy Keane and Scholes, I would understand why Mainoo can't get minutes, but no way these 3 deserve minutes after those performances. People here saw a highlight video of Baleba and now over half want to swap him for Mainoo, says Christian. Look, Baleba's a good player. I'm not going to change my mind on it because of some strange Mainoo obsession. I like Mainoo, but it doesn't mean that Baleba is a bad signing. I saw him a lot. Well, not a lot. I saw him a few times for Brighton last year. And I just think he's a fantastic talent. And I think that's a good bit of scouting. It's just obviously very expensive. Heiko says, I don't know how people can judge Amrim yet. Nothing happened to say he's the one or he is out. Exactly. Penga says, Cunha and Mbeumo are great players, but without a midfielder this window, I feel like history may look back at those luxury signings before the midfield as a mistake. Well, and again, I do agree with you on that. I do agree with you on that. I think that, I was very surprised we went for Mbeumo after Cunha. Very surprised. I'm very happy, but very surprised because Mbeumo is a brilliant player. But I was of the opinion that, did we need 2 number 10s? The priority positions were a striker, a midfielder, and a goalkeeper. For me, a number 10 in Cunha was a brilliant signing, but I don't recall putting a number 10 as a priority. I think the priority positions were a goalkeeper, a striker, and a midfielder. So to get 2 number 10s before the striker and then not even have a midfielder and a goalkeeper, I think you raise a valid point, but I don't know why United did that. Midfield is more shaky than the jelly in my fridge, says Amit. What is the constant through all the years of steady decline? Can't be ignored. It's Bruno. The captain's head is elsewhere. He looks miserable. I've done that one before from Marlow. Great stuff. Okay, if not Bruno, who can be our captain, says Sanchez. I mean, I wouldn't worry about that too much. Victoria's come back with 10 memberships. Are you Mojo in disguise? Are you Mojo in disguise? Give a big W to Victoria. Well, got a W at the end, a big one at the start. Ineos wants to sell Mainoo. In my opinion, Amrim equals the scapegoat, says Aki. And Anup says, do you think our goalkeeping coaching is the real issue? For at least 6 months, we have the same issue on corners. Says Anup. I think there are issues at Man United. Fitness, there are issues at Man United. I've said this before. When Ruben Amrim comes in, he doesn't come in with 50 coaches and 50 fitness people. He inherits what's already there. People never realise this. When Rangnick came in, he got 2 or 3 members of staff. When Ten Hag came in, he didn't clear out all the coaches and bring his own people in. There are people at that club that have been here since the days of Moyes. Certainly Mourinho, certainly Ollie. Like a lot of the backroom staff doesn't change with the manager. And it's a great point to say, well, it should. I know it can't happen straight away, but it should. It's the same as giving the manager his own players. He needs his own coaching setup. People talk about Ruben, isn't both goals personal mistake? Like, I understand we had a bad half, but there are positives, says Manton. And Victoria's back again. Tuchel, who executed this system to a higher level than Amrim, was hounded out by Chelsea. Keep on your rose-tinted glasses, Mark, accusing me of an agenda because I voice a different opinion. Great stuff. But no, it's not that you don't. It's not that you voice a different opinion that's the problem. It's the fact that you voice the same opinion with very little basis behind it. And I don't actually subscribe, again, 3 times, to pinning it all on Amrim after 2 games. I don't see the relevancy of last season. I don't. And I was appalled by last season. And the Europa League final disgusted me. But I think anybody with a brain knew that we had to draw a line under last season and say that this was where it really started. Pre-season, transfer window, Amrim, this is where it starts. So I don't care about last season. I mean, that sort of stuff belongs on Talk Shit. Oh, it's 28 games and he's only got a win percentage of this, that and the other. I think last season needs to be left in the bin. It's got so much, there's so many reasons for that and excuses. But this season is what it's all about. And 1 point from 6 isn't great, but I would expect it to be 4 from 9 on Saturday. Callum says, taking the piss, signing this new keeper. If this was Liverpool or Chelsea, it would have been done in 1 day. Just Callum. Similar to my thoughts. I've done that one from Paul. Okay, I've got to end because I've got to go and do Straight Facts with Terry, where we react to some clips. So you can join us on there at 11 o'clock. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, as always. Really enjoyed it. We're back at 2 o'clock, and we've got the 8 o'clock show as well. And I'm hoping that this week we break schedule and actually do some videos reacting to some big news like Here We Go or something. There's only 6 days in the window. We shouldn't be doing 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 8 o'clock. There should be 3:55. Here we go. There should be, midday. United in talks for Wharton. It's now or never. We've got to start moving, people. We want to move, but they've got to start moving. Fantastic show this morning. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Oh, big shout out. This afternoon, it's going to be a live stream as well. Live Bundesliga highlights show, week 1. All the goals, stuff for you to get involved in. Great graphics, great footage. About 4:30 today on That's Football. So get involved with that. It is England and Ireland only because that's where that's where they are. But I'm sure many of you are quite imaginative and find ways that you can watch that. Thanks for watching. Take care.